And gather round, gather round, gather round. Time for Spartan Mag Live. It is Friday night in East Lansing. Gather round, file in, behave yourselves. Be good people, be good Spartans. Be kind to one another. I know you always are. It's always a lot of fun. Come on in. We're going to talk Michigan State sports for the next hour, hour and a half, 2 hours sometimes, depending on how many questions we get and how long-winded I am, how much I have to drink, things like that. It's going to be fun. We've got some new recruiting happenings in the last few days. Get our reads on those, and we'll take questions from the masses live. Also, if you're new to this, we've got a mailbag type of situation over at SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. I've been publisher of SpartanMag.com since the beginning of the internet. My name is Jim Comparoni. If I didn't mention that before, that's not important. What's important is that you guys are here, ready to talk some Michigan State sports. Remember to tip your bartenders and your waitresses. Let's have a good time. I'll get to these questions that were posted at the Underground Bunker message board in the last 24 hours or so. I'll go through those. In the meantime, we will get questions here in the chat area. We roll it all together, and we use only the finest ingredients every day, and we churn out what's hopefully a palatable product, and we'll have another good Friday night. I wasn't as late as usual. That's good, probably. And it's still been 7 days since we did one of these, and I keep saying we're going to do more of these through the course of the week. I never quite get around to doing it because we've been pretty busy. Being busy is good these days, so I'm not complaining about that for sure. Let me change the angle of this light a little bit. It's a little bit, tone that one down a little bit. So busy is good. We're busy because we have subscribers at SpartanMag.com. Certainly appreciate those people. We appreciate our subscribers here at the YouTube channel. So go ahead and subscribe if you have not already. Check out SpartanMag.com if you are curious about it. You'll have a good time over there. We love to have new subscribers. Give us a thumbs up as well. We're going to dive into the first question, and then we'll come back and talk about some other things and one or two things that I forgot about. But anyway, question number 1 from Michigan State University. It was actually question number 11 or 12, but I threw it up to the top because it's what's happening now. It's what's happening now. It says, give us your updated prediction on whether there will be college football this fall. Updated prediction. He says, and he posted from Flint, Michigan, transplanted in Flint, Michigan, I think. He says, I'm definitely more hopeful than I was a month ago, but I still think fall sports could be moved to the spring. And you know what? Athletic directors, conference commissioners, they're all talking about it. They're staying active in the media, which I think is good because it gets people talking about it and thinking forward to the fall in case there is a season. And if you listen to those people talk, and Bill Beekman says they meet 3 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week, conference calls, Big Ten athletic directors, commissioners, and so forth. I mean, you hear this stuff as much as I do, all the news that's going on. They're carrying on as if they could get business as usual, some form of business as usual in the fall. It won't be completely as usual, but in terms of a football schedule, they're going forward with their fingers crossed. And I agree with the poster that it seems that there's better chances now than a week ago. But in this thing, things change every 72 hours. You guys know that. But it's interesting. Lately, I found some interesting quotes, or I found these quotes interesting from Larry Scott today. He's the commissioner of the Pac-12 conference, and he was interviewed, I think, just by the San Jose Mercury News. I don't think it was a teleconference, but he said he's increasingly optimistic about a 2020 football season. He said that today, and because of a few different things. One of the things he cited, the commissioner of the Pac-12, is that the NFL, the National Football League, came out with its schedule, its regular season schedule, Monday night schedule, Thanksgiving schedule, all of it, came out with the schedule. And he thought it was good that there was no blowback from governmental officials. So he thought that was positive. That's not something that I would have been looking for necessarily, but that's a commissioner. He's speaking for commissioners, I would imagine. So that came and went. Everything seems all clear about that. And he also said that there were some positive indications from the Pac-12's COVID-19 Medical Advisory Committee, which is made up of doctors, trainers, and health officers. And so they've gotten good indications from them. As you know, I mean, nationally, people are taking cautious steps forward. In some places, more aggressively than others for good reason. I'm not here to say one is correct and one is incorrect, or that one is going to prove to be better than another. But as those steps are taken, and we're not seeing blowback from officials or other problems that we're kind of hoping doesn't happen, then it gets you a little further down the road toward the possibility. And I will agree that a little more optimistic than I was. This weekend, the UFC is going to have an event. No fans, I think. It's in Jacksonville. Next week, NASCAR is going to have a race in Darlington. I think 2 races in Darlington in a 4-day period. No time trials, no fans, no qualifying, no practice, just the race. I think there's going to be a lot of people watching that, even people that don't like NASCAR, for a few minutes anyway. So all those things are steps, right? And we're hearing what the University of Tennessee expects to have all students back in the fall. I think Grand Valley State said that as well in Michigan. And several other schools have said that. Purdue has said that. Michigan State and Michigan haven't said anything. And of course, there's no all clear in the state of Michigan. You know that. But that thought process might have a little more merit, a little more optimism than a week or so ago. So the question is, give us my updated prediction. I'm not going to give a percentage on that. You know, back in March when this first came out, I think I heard Jim Brandstatter say it was 50-50. That sounded good enough for me, 50-50. Since then, it went down to 10%. Now, you know, maybe I'd push that back up to maybe a fall football season, 12 games. I'd push that back up to 16.5% maybe. But interesting comments from people like James Franklin talking about that, hey, if there's only 9 Big Ten teams that want to play, then I'd say we should just go with 9 teams. It's not all or nothing. And other commissioners are saying things like that too. The SEC commissioner said that. So could we see a situation where not all the country is playing? But even if we get to that situation and there is an all clear and you do have students back and you do have a football training camp, then you get into September, even if you play 1 game, I mean, everybody knows this. What happens on a Tuesday, September 14th, you're getting ready to play Toledo on Saturday, and you have 1 player test positive for your team, no matter who your team is, Illinois, Michigan State, whomever. 1 player test positive. In the current landscape, you have to shut down practice, quarantine the whole team for 14 days, I think. Maybe life will be different then. I'm not sure. And then that game is canceled. What happens if you play on Saturday and someone tests positive on Monday who played in the game? Now do you quarantine your team and the team you just played? So those type of tripping points make it seem... that's why I'm not creeping it over 16% right now. A lot of things can change. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not an expert on those things by any means, but you know that the Miami Dolphins have come out with a model in which they feel they can stage a football game with 15,000 fans with social distancing. So they're talking about having fans. University of Georgia, I think there's been some talk about what they would do with their stadium. They've gone as far as to talk about having concourses that are just one way. You can only walk one way, so you don't have people coming both ways. So, I mean, things are still delayed in Europe. The numbers are more troubling in the United States now. So that's what everybody's talking about. When we do Spartan Mag Live, for the most part, we talk sports, and stay away from those things. But there are times when they intercede. There's an intersection between the public events of what's going on health-wise and sports. There's an intersection there. And that's why we're all here doing this. And sometimes we'll talk about it. But for the most part, the rest of the night, probably not a whole lot of that, except I would like to see your thoughts on what you think the chances are that there is a college football season of some sort this fall. Maybe just Big Ten games. Maybe if everything's all clear, you play as many games as you can, get as many games as you can in, and if things shut down October 1st, you shut it down, pick it back up in the spring. Not ideal, but in the current situation, maybe you take what you can get. I don't know. Whatever happens, we'll be covering it at SpartanMag.com. We appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to go ahead and tweet something right now to invite some more ne'er-do-wells in here. Hopefully they'll come in and behave themselves. And let's go to question number 2. This is from Spartan Fan 81 from Parts Unknown. All right, this is a good one also. He says, how many commitments do you expect in Michigan State's commitment, the recruiting class for the 2021 recruiting class? He says, do you think the staff will oversign because they anticipate a lot of attrition? I would have to assume so. Michigan State with 10 commitments right now. And now all of a sudden people at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com are like, wait, I saw a post, someone said, should we pump the brakes a little bit? Is Michigan State getting too many commitments? Is there enough room? Is there a chance that some of the commitments Michigan State might scale back away from in the future? I don't know. It's possible. So Michigan State with 10 commitments, I went down the roster, and by my count, if I counted it right, I saw, let me see, I've got a little too much light going on, I think. Again, I counted up 84 players that came in as initial scholarship guys. That does not include players that have walk-ons that have gone on scholarship, because that's always, a one-year situation that can be scaled back at any time. Michigan State's not taking a scholarship away from a walk-on that I can remember ever. Some of you might be aware of one, but I can't think of one right now. So I'm just looking at 84 current initial scholarship guys. That does not count someone like Blake Buter, who I think might be on scholarship now. So 84, that's if you count the current players and the incoming freshmen. So 84, that leaves room for 1. And that's not counting, it'd be 85 if you count the punter, Mitchell Crawford, who's transferring in as a grad transfer from UTEP. So 85 looks like it's full to me. How many seniors? I'm counting 12 seniors, 12 scholarship seniors. And I'm counting 8 redshirt juniors who are in their 4th year in the program. So the seniors, the kicker, Matt Coughlin, I guess it is. I've always had trouble with that name. I shouldn't. No offense to him. He's had some good moments. Dominique Long, Larice Nelson, Trey Person, Antoine Simmons, Jordan Reed, Luke Campbell, Matt Allen, A.J. Arcuri, Matt Dotson, Naquan Jones, Jacob Panashuk. Those are the 12 seniors. As far as redshirt juniors, technically 4th year guys, how many of these players do you get to the end of the season? Okay, you've played 4 years. You've got another year of eligibility. We appreciate what you've done, but it's time to move on. C.J. Hayes, Connor Hayward, Rocky Lombardi, Emmanuel Flowers, Mustafa Khalifa, Diari Todd, Tyler Hunt, Cole Hahn. Those are the redshirt juniors that I counted up. All of those guys, there's a chance that none of those players will be starting this year. So they would be candidates for that type of attrition. Rocky Lombardi, a quarterback, he's a candidate to start. He's also a candidate to get overtaken and surpassed. So if he is surpassed, would he look to transfer elsewhere just for an opportunity to play? That's always a possibility, of course. So 20, if you count those guys, and that's not counting like actual raw attrition. Raw attrition meaning, guys that are freshmen and sophomore that move on. So 20, they've got 10 right now. I'm sure that Mel Tucker, in building and replenishing the program under his watch, would love to have a class of 25 and max out. So I'm guessing the way he's operating and how aggressive he is and the way he's watched Nick Saban build it, and they are ruthless with the way they cut players. Is he going to be like that? I'm not sure, but it would not surprise me if he levels with some guys and say, look, we're recruiting. We don't see you in the 2 deep for the rest of your career. We'd love to have you, but we'd like to help you find a new school. I could see that happening, and I think they will need that to happen in order to get to 25. If they had spring football practice, the coaches would have a better idea of what they have and which of those players might not figure into their plans. And those players would also possibly get the indication that they don't quite have it long term. A lot of times there is attrition after spring practice because guys go through winter conditioning. They're third stringers. The seniors have moved on, and they figure, hey, this is my time to really step out. If it doesn't happen, then they look to move on. Without spring practice, there's less of that information out there. So without spring practice, that delays the situation. It muddies the situation, fogs it up for the coaches. But I have to believe that as they try to get this program going again, I think I'm expecting 25. Even though right now they don't have room, they've got 10 right now. I'm expecting 15 more. We will keep our ear to the ground and put that question out there a little bit more to get a little more information to see how correct we are with those type of things. I'll be back in 1 second for question number 3 from Alex from Los Angeles. Thanks for tuning in. Give me 30 seconds. That's normally where we'd have a word from our sponsor, right? But right now, no sponsors. But I'll tell you what, we did get a nice little care package from New Jersey. And I'm not going to get into that this week because I forgot. I was sent a couple of bottles of wine from David Simpson. He played in the 80s under Perlis, had to take a medical injuries. As a matter of fact, I saw David Simpson when I was watching the replay of the 1988 Rose Bowl, Michigan State versus USC. It was on last Saturday night on the NBC Sports Channel. And on the sideline, I saw number 68 Simpson, not in pads, because he had fractured his hand, compound fracture in his hand during bowl practice. He was a second stringer. He was part of the jumbo package late in the season, fractured his hand, didn't play in the Rose Bowl, and had other injuries. But someone I've kept in contact here and there. Didn't really know him when he was at State. Although I'm pretty sure he was a Holden Hall guy, and I was a Holden Hall guy. Saw him a few times. But anyway, connected with him years later, because actually he was at a Michigan State football camp a few years ago. Anyway, he's associated, his wife's associated with Cape May Winery and Vineyards, the southern tip of the Jersey Shore, Cape May, New Jersey. Beautiful place. I've never been there. The photos look great. Had a couple bottles of wine. I was going to open them and leave them open for about 30 minutes and test them. They're reds. The labels look great. But as I was getting ready for Spartan Mag Live, I didn't get it opened and didn't have it all set up. Didn't get a glass. Then we're ready to kick it off. I'm like, I didn't get that set up. So next time we will do that. Look forward to doing that because I know you guys are enjoying some refreshments, some spirits. That's encouraged. That's condoned. Tell me what you're sampling. Let us know how it's going. I'd like to sample that. Tell you how it is. And you know what? I've never been to the south end or the Jersey Shore in general. Really nice, especially way down at the southern tip. Those are nice photos. I've been on the other side of the Delaware Bay. I've been over there in Delaware, like Dewey Beach, Delaware. A lot of fun there back in the old days. Some of you know what I'm talking about. That place. So wonderful seafood around there. And I wanted to get into that wine this time. And my wife's going to be mad at me because she's been wanting to open them. And I'm like, oh, no, I got to wait till the show and I'll open it up and then you can get some. But because of this, she's going to have to wait another week. And she's not going to be happy about that. So, she'll be all right. She'll be all right. Anyway, let's go. Let me check to see what's going on here in the chat area. Because I want to make sure, because you guys let me know when there's a sound problem. And I've been checking the messages a little bit. I've not detected a sound problem. So that's good. Off to a pretty good start. Let me just take a little roll here, see what's going on. Detroit Spartan here first. Good to see him. He led Spartan Mag Live in scoring 2 weeks ago. I'm sure he'll be strong again tonight. Says make way for the Pope. Thank you. Carter 917 says, what are we hearing about Jamari Buddin? That's the linebacker recruit, currently a junior at Belleville High School. We will get into that in some of the questions coming up. Old Tuck says, the bell cow. And Old Tuck is the bell cow with a bunch. It's good to have him chiming in. From Ludington, Michigan, now out of Austin, Texas, if I'm not mistaken. Ty Jordan says, do you think the 79 years with a player drafted ends next year for Michigan State football? Ty Jordan getting right to it. 79 years, Michigan State with a draft pick, third longest streak in the country. And then what's the other thing? One of only 3 in the modern era of the NFL draft to have had a player selected every year, which goes back maybe 60 years or something. Michigan, Michigan State, and USC, I think. So, next year, does it end? Well, what do you guys think? Throw that out to you guys. I mean, is there a chance Matt Allen could rally? Kevin Jarvis? You know, Jack Allen did not get drafted. He was a free agent, right? Brian Allen did get drafted. Wide receiver position. You know, I mean, I think Antoine Simmons, but linebacker's a funny thing in the NFL. We just saw that with Joe Bacci. I think if Antoine Simmons continues to do what he does, I think he's got a good chance. You know, it's going to be slim. It's going to be tight. So it very well could be the year. The year that Brian Allen was drafted was a tight year, and they made it through. You know, Detroit Spartan talking about A.J. Arcuri. Arcuri does look good. The eye test wise, moves well. But, man, in terms of NFL draft picks and NFL prognostications for NFL draft picks, I'm not really good at guessing what other people are going to guess. Because they're guessing on who's going to be good. And I don't know. I mean, I was surprised that Raekwon Williams didn't get drafted. I'm still trying to find out what the knock on him was. Because I thought he was good in college. Maybe they were expecting him to keep building. He had a rapid rise early in his career. Maybe they feel he plateaued. I'm not sure. Good question, though. I don't have the answer on that one. Your guess is as good as mine. You pose a good question, though. As far as the news goes, I want to talk a little about the most recent commitment. Yesterday, or was it today? I lose track. Yesterday. The punter from Australia, Mark Vassett from Melbourne, Australia, 6'4", committed to Michigan State. Full ride scholarship, 4-year recruit. Corey Robinson with the scoop on that one. Great job, Corey Robinson, as always, covering Michigan State recruiting for SpartanMag.com. Doing a great job. Paul Konerdijk doing a great job with his articles, especially Konerdijk with some of his follow-up articles about some of the recruiting commitments and other coverage of the spring football interviews that we had. Konerdijk's been doing a great job for us for a long time. Really appreciate him. So Mark Vassett commits. Corey Robinson with the scoop. Had some quotes from Mark over at SpartanMag.com, Mark Vassett. And interestingly, Corey points out that Mark Vassett is 23 years old coming in as a freshman, had been a construction worker. So he had played athletically for either rugby or Australian rules football and had been training with Pro Kick Australia. Pro Kick Australia has really become a story in terms of producing punters. Why Australia can produce punters per capita so much better than the United States right now, I have no idea. I know some of those guys were, they were brought up on rugby and Australian rules football, punting on the run, things like that. But why it's happening so often, I'm not sure. But a lot of them are very good. So Michigan State goes and gets that one. 23-year-old freshman. So we're going to be looking into that one a little bit more. When it broke and when we tried to look into it a little bit more, it was, 4 o'clock in the afternoon here. It was 4 in the morning there. We couldn't really do follow-ups. But some of the follow-ups with that punter, there's going to be some interesting stories come out of there. SpartanMag.com will be looking into that. It's interesting that he'll be following Mitchell Crawford, who I suspect will be here for 1 year. Mitchell Crawford coming in as a grad transfer from Texas El Paso, originally from, was it Queensland, Australia, something like that? A guy that started for 2 years for UTEP, averaged 39 yards per punt each time, or each season, 2019, 2018. You look at his bio at UTEP, and Mitchell Crawford was listed as a sophomore in 18 and a junior in 19. So technically, I guess he's a senior. But there's nothing that says that he played in 17 or 16. And I remember we talked to him. I'd have to go back and look at the article and maybe talk to Corey about it. But I can't think whether or not he had more than 1 year of eligibility. He's a grad transfer, so he's eligible right away. So he's been at school for long enough to transfer. But I doubt that Michigan State would offer Mark Vassett if Mitchell Crawford were around for a second year. some of you read the article about Crawford when he committed, and this is why I rely on you guys, because a lot of times, many times, you've got a better memory than I do about recent events. But with Crawford coming in as a grad transfer, he's going to have to compete with Tyler Hunt. Tyler Hunt's a junior now, and Tyler Hunt had about, 15 or 20 punts back in 2018 when Hartbarger and all those other guys were injured. Hunt came in and did a good job, averaged 40.1 yards per punt as a redshirt freshman in 2018. He's a redshirt junior now from Gobles, Michigan. We wrote about that last month, and also the fact that Bryce Behringer was invited back to the program. He was one of the punters in 18, kind of rolled off the couch and onto the field. They used him against Illinois. Originally had gone to Illinois as a preferred walk-on. He's a Michigander, came back to Michigan State, tried out as a walk-on. They told him, don't call us, we'll call you. Then there were some injuries, and then we did call you. So Behringer showed up, punted a few times, struggled a little bit as a freshman just coming off the couch. And then, of course, Tyler Hunt was back, and then Hartbarger was back. So Behringer went into the portal to see if there was any interest, and I don't think there was much interest. So he went back to Michigan State as a regular student, took last year off as far as football goes, and then this year, Bouwmeester, the other Australian, who was slated to possibly start this fall, went back home to Australia, homesickness. So Michigan State's in a lurch. They don't have any punters. They call up Behringer. He's still on campus. Bring him back out to the team. And he was going to be with the team this spring. Would have loved to have seen him at the Green-White game, as well as Tyler Hunt. But never happened. So punting is certainly interesting. One other commitment this week, Michael Gravely out of Cleveland, Glenville. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in Spartan Mag Live. Michael Gravely, 6'1", 180, ranked the number 35 player in the state of Ohio by Rivals.com. Offers from Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Wake Forest, Duke, Colorado, and some others. Let's take a look here. Next question. Oh, it's from Alex from Los Angeles. Sorry I kept you on hold. I went there and I had to adjust the lighting. It was bothering me. So Alex says, can you share what you're hearing on Xavier Tillman and Kareem Mane? Basketball question. Similarly, can you please elaborate on your Bates comments in the last live? Yeah. As far as Tillman and Mane go, nothing new right now that I'm aware of. The things that are new is, the draft combine has been suspended indefinitely. So is the lottery. You can't have the draft without figuring out the draft lottery. Can't have the draft lottery until the regular season's over. Is the regular season over? It probably is, but they're not saying that yet. So that's on hold. As of now, the deadline to join the draft is still June 3rd. Nothing official has been announced about that yet. But I was talking to Corey Evans and Eric Bossi about this, Rivals.com lead basketball recruiting writers and analysts. And they tell me it's just a matter of time before that June 3rd deadline gets extended also. So if that June 3rd deadline gets extended to July 3rd, it's another month that Xavier Tillman's going to have to just read the situation. And they'll allow him to read the situation. He has full support from the coaching staff, of course. Everything is open there, and Izzo has said he's confident that Xavier Tillman will make an intelligent, informed decision when the time comes. Kareem Mane, same as last week. If he decides to play college basketball, all the indications that I get are that Michigan State will likely be his choice. Question is he going to go the pro ranks? As many of you know, 5-star point guard, big point guard, 6'5" from Montreal. And he's grade 13. He's going to be 19 years old, so he can go straight to the pro ranks right now. He can go straight to the NBA if he gets drafted. So he's reading his situation. Where will he be drafted? So he's weighing those things also. And as I said last week and the week before that, one of the flies in the ointment is if you decide to come to college, right now you don't know what college is going to be. At Michigan State, are there going to be students on campus? And if there's no students on campus, there's not going to be any basketball practice in October. So if you decide to go to college right now, you don't know for sure that there's going to be Coach Izzo on the court with the players in October. So if that's not going to be there and you're 50-50 on whether to go college or pro, and you're not sure there's going to be a college, it seems like it would weigh things toward going pro. Of course, there might not be pro basketball either. But like I said last week, the Pro League, the G League, it's just more agile. It's more agile. They could lift the curtain in a matter of in a 3-week period, bring everybody back to Orlando, Florida for training camp. Did I just I bumped the microphone. Let me know if it's working. How are we doing? On audio. Give me some feedback. It's good. Thanks, James. All right. So it's better now, huh? Okay, good. All right. So I forgot what I was talking about, but the G League, even if you're not going to make an NBA team, even if you're not going to make, so it sounds better than it did, huh? Okay, good. Sounds much better. I don't know if it was working before. Maybe I was going through the phone before, and now the microphone's working. The problem with this USB feed at the bottom of this microphone is you guys don't need to know this, but it's not snug in there. It's a little too loose, so a little bit of a bump and it comes out, and it messes up the whole situation. I apologize about that, but we are primitive here, and casual, so that's part of the ball game. But like I said, G League, NBA, they could announce they're not going to do it right now, but in September they could say, "Hey, we're back in 3 weeks, training camp now, test." More agile that way. They can make more short-term decisions. You get into a college situation, if the students are not back, or if there's no practice, I mean, you're shutting things down till at least winter semester, spring semester, January 1st, I would think. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that enters into it. So right now, as long as there's no developments there, I don't foresee developments on their end because they can wait till June 3rd to decide right now. So it's May 8th. Why not wait till May 25th? Even if you're leaning toward going pro, might as well wait, I guess. So no new information there as far as those guys go. Question number 4 from Ward44. He says, have you heard anything about Josh Langford's decision? And basically, Josh Langford, I don't think he can make a decision until those guys make a decision. Because right now, Michigan State had 3 seniors. They had 3 scholarship. 3 seniors moving on. They had 13 on scholarship. 3 moved on. Cassius Winston, Kyle Arns, and we think Langford, right? Although the door is still open to possibly come back. So 2 scholarship slots available. Well, Michigan State has Sissoko and Hogard coming in, so those 2 are full. So right now there's no scholarships for Langford. If Tillman leaves, he's got a scholarship. If Tillman stays and Henry leaves, he's got a scholarship. If Tillman leaves and Mane comes to Michigan State, he doesn't have a scholarship. So Langford can't make that decision until other things clear up. Nobody's saying that right now, but that's got to be what's going on. And he's back home in Alabama, I'm pretty sure. So I'm sure Izzo, Langford didn't know for sure, and Langford's waiting for a sign, which I can respect. He's just waiting, doing some soul searching, and there's no hurry for him to decide right now. And they've probably told him, hey, if you decide you want to play, you just go home and train on your own and whatever you want to do. And if you decide you want to come back and we've got a scholarship open, you can play for us. But right now, Michigan State, their first priority is that point guard situation. They would take Kareem Mane, I'm sure, rather than Langford, I think. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the way I would do it. Because even if you save it for Langford, he might change his mind. The health situation is still a concern. Even if he comes back after 2 years off, what version of Josh Langford are we going to see? I'm not sure. That's my guess. I've not talked to Izzo in a while. I talked to him the day that the Braden Burke thing broke briefly. Maybe I'll try to get him here in the next week or so. I've been leaving him alone a little bit. He's been doing a lot of radio interviews. Maybe I need to bother him. Last time I talked to him, he was pretty busy that day, though. I've talked to some other assistant coaches, and I'll try to get some more information on that. Question number 5 from Maul. He says, when was the last time Michigan State football had this much national recruiting emphasis? Was it the Bobby Williams era with Reggie Mitchell? Well, Bobby Williams did do a lot of recruiting nationally. This is more, though, with Mel Tucker. It's even more. But, yes, this is the most. This is more than D'Antonio did. D'Antonio loved to recruit Michigan, Ohio, the Big Ten area. And he scattered out nationally here and there. Hit Georgia, Florida a little bit. Texas a couple of times, not a lot. Arizona a little bit, not much west of the Mississippi. But he would go further away from home once they didn't have what they needed closer to home. Mel Tucker casts that net wide and does it initially, right out of the chute. He does it. He doesn't wait around. And I know a lot of Michigan State fans are getting a big kick out of it. It's been fun to watch it. It's been fun to analyze it. It's been intriguing. It's a new approach for Michigan State. And he is a dynamic personality. And he's aggressive. And he is a relentless salesperson. And it's resonating. Right now he's got 2 commitments from Florida, and they both look good in the defensive backfield. He's got one from Ohio this week. He's got a quarterback from Texas, and he looks good. An offensive lineman from New Jersey, a little bit of a project, as all offensive linemen are. He's improving his quickness right now. I would have loved to have seen him at the camps this summer. Won't get a chance to do that. A DB from Maryland, who looks okay. I'd like to see more film of him in the fall, but coming from DeMatha, that's a good one. And then 4 from Michigan. So, yeah, as you guys know that follow it closely, if you're here watching this, then you're a big Michigan State fan and you're aware of what's going on with recruiting with Michigan State. Not only have they rang the bell with those guys, but they're in on some other ones, too, across the country. Louisiana. There's going to be some from Louisiana. So, yes, this is the most national that they've ever been in the spring this early. Now, Saban wanted to go national, but he would sprinkle out into Florida, but he wasn't going to multiple states like this. Yeah, he went after the quarterback, what was his name, Rashad something or other from Hoboken, New Jersey, went to Penn State, Rashad Casey or something like that. So there were some guys that they went after out east. Bobby Williams went after some Floridians, got some good ones. Matthias Askew, some others. Almost got Kellen Winslow Jr., but sprinkled here and there. Never did a whole lot in Texas. Even in that was a time when Iowa and Purdue were recruiting well in Texas. Michigan State never did. Recent years, they've gotten a few things in Texas. Tyler Higbee, Josh Butler, turned out to be functional players. Not great players, but throw them in the talent pool, see what happens. Hampton Faye, the quarterback from Texas, like what I see out of him. And now the Buckner kid, who's the nephew of Myron Bell, out in Arizona, linebacker, solid shot at him. It's really interesting to see what they're doing right now with some of these out-of-region players committing to Michigan State who've never been on campus, some of whom have never met Mel Tucker face-to-face. So when Mel Tucker gets to the point where he's winning 7, 8 games a year, 9 games a year, if that happens, and he's able to recruit people on a full recruiting cycle, reach out to them via Zoom as a junior, because he's still going to be doing that. Even when everything clears up, he's still going to be using Zoom. I think it's going to remain one of the frontiers of recruiting, FaceTime and so forth. He'll still be doing that. At this time of year in May, I don't know if it's going to be allowed. Usually you're not allowed to do that. However, see, if a recruit calls you, you can take the call. So these days, if they Zoom you, if they FaceTime you, that's different than just a phone call, right? And he's good in this medium. You've seen that. And he wants to be good. He's putting effort and energy into it. And he likes it. He's a salesperson. And if he's able to do this after he's been around for a couple years and won a little bit, and then he's not recruiting these guys 2 months out, but he's recruiting them 20 months out, I don't know how well he can recruit, man. I don't know, man. But there's a lot of potential there. Question number 6, Big Don from DeWitt, Michigan. Well, I don't know, but I tell you what, Mel Tucker would probably love to give the answer to that because I'm sure he feels he does know. And he's a positive thinker and a relentless worker. He would say, oh, we're going to have top 15, top 10 classes. That's what he would say, I'm guessing. But me, I don't know. I'll be cautious about it, but it's different. It's different, and it's intriguing. Big Don from DeWitt. He says, well, this one's kind of tight here. He says, a great forward for your .comp book project would be for you to tell how you got this fantastic product started and the struggles along the way and when you started to think it would all fly and become the success it is now. Just a thought that I think would make a great read. Well, thanks, Don. I know Don's a big reader around town. He's been calling a lot of the talk shows here for a lot of years, and I respect his opinion, and that's a great compliment, and I appreciate that. The .comp book, we talked about that last week in Spartan Mag Live. When he talking about the struggles along the way and when you started to think that this would all fly and become a success that it is now. A success, I'm really cautious about using the word success. I mean, I'm very blessed that able to do this for a living, support the family and do that, and provide some jobs even, maybe some entertainment, meet some friends. Very blessed, very thankful that able to do this. Not ready to call it a success though. I'm more of a Tom Izzo type. I'll call it a success if we can do this for another 20 years. But I'm not calling it a success yet. We've got a lot of work to do. We can improve in a lot of ways. But struggles along the way. I don't know. There's I don't know. Just before the internet, the internet was great. And when the internet came around, and I saw some of the message boards, I'm like, this is good. This is cool. This is a good thing for us. I mean, I was eager to get in there and get into the message boards and share some information. Because back then I was doing Spartan Magazine 18 times a year, have a lot of information, pumping out that magazine to a limited audience. But between issues, I would have information, but no medium, no platform. So the internet message boards create a platform, and we were there to jump in with recruiting first and, spring football analysis, things like that. And it's been good. And we've had a lot of fun. And, we had the website kind of coming and going. Rivals.com started. I think it was called the Insiders.com to begin with. And it was free. And it was trying to follow the television advertising example back in the .com bubble era. Around that time, email was taking off. This is ancient history. This is like 1996, 1997. And I started Spartan Plus emails. I figured that was a time between issues of the magazine, put it out there for a cost, and had a good number of subscribers. And, was able to write some stuff kind of underground, a little bit more spicy, a little bit more controversial without way out in the public. And that was good. But I saw the number of initial subscribers that there was a market, that people would pay for this. Rivals.com was free at the time. I didn't know much about it, about the .com industry, and they wanted to be free, and they recruited us to be their Michigan State site way back then. I was like, it's gonna be free, huh? I'm like, well, I didn't mention it because nobody asked my opinion. I'll give my opinion if they ask for it, but no one was asking my opinion. But I knew from just our little focus group at Spartan Plus, I knew that people would pay for this, and they would pay for it all over the country. So the original Rivals.com began as a free site. A lot of .com venture cap money came in, sawed through a lot of money, and it was one of the .coms that went belly up. And then the assets were reassembled, and Rivals.com came back a month or two later as a pay-per-access website, national website. And I'm like, there you go. It's going to work. And it did. So that's the name of that tune. So there were some struggles nationally with some of that stuff, but I could go with some other stuff, but it's been good. Appreciate you guys being along and supporting us. We really appreciate the support that we get from our subscribers. Good people out there. Couldn't do it without you. And it's fun to work for you guys. You guys are my bosses. All right? So, and you know what? You can yell at me too, a little bit. Not too much, though. Depend. Interesting name, Depend. He says, Jim, you and I go way back to the startup of Spartan Magazine. Spartan John and I would kibitz about trying to buy into your enterprise back in the 90s. Spartan John, great man, great Spartan. Did you ever seriously consider any of the offers along the way from startup to Rivals affiliation? Never seriously. There were 2 or 3 parties that showed some interest in buying in. There was another media entity that was a national entity that gave us an offer to buy Spartan Magazine and the website probably 12 years ago. And it was an attractive offer, appreciated it. But I was at an age, if I'd been 55 years old, maybe I would have cashed out. But I was at an age that I just wanted to keep hanging on to it as it was. And continue with the annual contracts that we had at that point, and keep trying to build on what we had. But thanks for asking those questions. Let's get back to Michigan State stuff. Polo from Rockford says, number one, can you please go into detail about the situation with Jamari Buddin? That's the linebacker from Belleville. He says, it sounds like we have a lot of reasons to feel good about where Michigan State has risen to in his recruitment, but it's up in the air as to when he might commit. Any new insight on that? He's 6'2", 210 out of Belleville, number 8 player in the state of Michigan. And he can turn the corner as a pass rusher. He's physical. He's a man out there. He's a linebacker. He's what you're looking for. He was planning to decide in December, and then that got a little reshuffled. When Mel Tucker and those guys were first hired, they were interested in Buddin, but I remember being told that the timing just wasn't good with Michigan State and Buddin. Not told that from Michigan State people, but that was just a feeling in the recruiting circles that the timing just wasn't good. Tucker was getting too late of a start. Michigan and Penn State had too big of a lead. It was just the timing wasn't good. Michigan State was able to get him on campus for the Ohio State game, senior day basketball, junior day, and he was impressed. Buddin was. And then 2 weeks after that, Buddin tweeted out, he said, quote, "They're building something special over there," unquote, about Michigan State. So, there's no question that Mel Tucker and his people struck a chord with Buddin. All right? And then the shutdown happened. And now all communication, I'm sure James Franklin is doing a pretty good job communicating, FaceTime and so forth. We know Mel Tucker is, and we know Mel Tucker is doing it every day, relentlessly, with his staff. Michigan was the perceived leader. How good a job is Jim Harbaugh doing with his staff, with the Facebook Live, with the Zoom meetings? They would have to be doing really well to be doing as well as Michigan State. I think Michigan State is caught up, and the reasons are for what we're talking about. Michigan State, in this landscape of virtual recruiting, Michigan State is outperforming some of those. That's why they've gained. And I've not heard this from Buddin directly, but when he tweeted out a couple of days ago that all those crystal balls don't pay attention to him, he's not talking about specifically crystal balls, but just predictions throughout the landscape and the industry. He says, don't pay any attention to those. In other words, he's not 100% anywhere. In other words, he's not sure yet where he's going. That's my read on that. So no new information straight from the horse's mouth, but he is a horse and he plays. He's a physical player, excellent player. And the longer all of this goes, the better Michigan State has a chance. I think Michigan State will continue to do well in the virtual world recruiting him. I say that, and tomorrow all of a sudden, boom, he could commit to Michigan. We've seen that in past years, that people that Michigan State were pursuing would all of a sudden go to Michigan in the spring. That would really surprise me if that happened. I don't think that's going to be happening in the near future. If it goes all the way deeper into summer, things open up again, then you get visits, then the recruiting battle restarts, and Michigan State will be at a better spot. Then do you have a football season? I'm not sure. But that's going to be one of the more intriguing recruiting battles out there. If Michigan State's able to come in late and make that kind of progress for a player like that, that would be really interesting. But no new updates on that. And other than right now, the longer it goes, the longer there's no news, I think the better it is for Michigan State right now. For now. Let's go over to the chat area, take some questions over there. Probably should have done this earlier. Sorry for late getting to it. Brad Fishenko says, highly recommended Spartan Mag. Appreciate that, Brad. Appreciate the plug. Christopher Trainham says, Mall 286 in the house. Good to have you, Mall. It's good to know your real name, too. Old Tuck, yeah, from Austin, Texas, via Ludington. Is the new punter more like Josh Butland or Greg Montgomery? Old Tuck doing his old tricks. Butland and Montgomery were good athletes. You know that. Butland was a big dude, had one of the best bench presses on the team. And for a while, with his frame and strength, they considered making him an offensive lineman, but he was a good punter. I'm kind of surprised he didn't make the NFL. Greg Montgomery, good one, Rose Bowl years, made the NFL, excellent one. So I'm not sure. The new punter from Australia, I've not seen him yet. We're still doing research on him. I'm not a great evaluator of punting talent either. Although I will say, and some of you can chime in about this. Thanks for that, Detroit Spartan. Yeah, thumbs up would be good. Punt, I've gone to a lot of high school games. A lot of you have gone to a lot of high school games. I've gone to a lot of high school games for a lot of years. And I'm not sure I've ever seen a game where I've seen a punter at a high school game and said, oh, yeah, that guy, that's a Big Ten punter right there. I mean, in the Big Ten, they've got guys, averaging 43, 44 yards a punt. It's a rare talent. There's plenty of people that have worked and worked and worked on that craft and don't have it. Not a lot of natural punters out there. And maybe some of you have seen some. I know. Grand Ledge had that one guy, what was his name, Mitch McKinney, a few years ago, and he was okay. That was like 20 years ago. And there's been some others, but I've not happened to see them, and there's not a lot of, I don't even see many walk-on type punters. There's not a lot of them out there. Zoom, Chris Trainum says, switched it up fresh off of Zoom. Happy hour. Went with Jameson on the rocks. Good man. Ty Garland says, happy Friday, Comp. Was hoping for a chat tonight. Good to have you here. Tyrone Garland, Oak Park, Illinois. Originally from New Jersey. Linebacker. 1993 recruiting class, I think. MM Drippy says, yo. I say, what's up? Good. D-Pen says, checking in for the late happy hour with Comp. D-Pen again. He's D-Pen at the Underground Bunker message board, and he's D-Pen here. Once social distancing is over, don't worry, D-Pen. I'm still staying 6 feet away from you, my man. No, not going to risk it. Gotcha. All right, Chris Trainham says, crazy that it's been a little over 60 days since Cash's last game. So happy I made it to that game. I agree. Those 60 days have gone fast, in my opinion. And I think it's because in my life and in a lot of your lives, it is Groundhog Day. It's the same thing every day. And I'm not complaining. I like what's going on around here, the work that we're doing, the home life, hanging out with the kids, doing some sports when we can, backyard or around the block. It's been good. But every day is the same, and boom, 60 days. It's gone by fast. It's May 8th. I mean, I like it to warm up a little bit, but I kind of like some time. I kind of like to be able to put another month in there somewhere so that there can be more time to pass, so that more gains can be made toward wherever we're going, if that makes sense. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show says late, but here. Yeah, you're late. Is Rob South here? Rob South was one of the first ones, I think. But Untitled Beer Ranking Show is late, and that's his second tardy. So anymore, and there's going to be detention for him. Depend from St. Augustine. Oh, he says St. Augustine bourbon. Good for you. Chris Trinum says, true that at the Untitled Beer Ranking Show. What's going on here? The good old green bean, says Band. I'll take your word for it on that one. Let's get back to the other questions here. The mailbag questions. All right. And I think Polo wanted to know about this also. But Dom in Atlanta, Georgia says, Jim, any updates on the Jaden Akins recruitment? Recent forecasts post virtuals at other schools. It has to be a good sign. Jaden Akins, underrated, super athletic basketball prospect. Farmington, Michigan, 6'2", 6'3", maybe all of 6'3". Vertical up near 40 inches. Competitive, nice shot, step back jumper.
And you watch his film, there's enough times when he sees the floor real well and dishes out some nice dimes, nice passes. Combo guard, true combo guard. 40-plus vert, says Detroit Spartan. I don't doubt it. There's that one shot of him where he is trailing a fast break and blocks a shot up on the backboard, taking off from the dots at 6'3", and like hits his head on the bottom of the backboard while he's landing. I mean, ultra ups on that guard. Good shooter. Good enough passer to be a combo guard. Not a pure point, but dynamic enough that he can hone that craft in to become a lead guard. So talented. Anyway, Michigan State's in there. Michigan's in there. Yeah, there have been some whispers this week that things have gone from good to very good for Michigan State's chances with him. Michigan State's had a good chance all along. He likes them. They like him. So that would be a big one. You put him in there with Pierre Brooks. That'd be a nice combo. Pierre Brooks, he and Brooks are close. That helps. Of course, Kobe Buffkin is out there too. They like Buffkin. Buffkin likes them. Buffkin is a really talented guy from Grand Rapids. Max Christie's still out there from Chicagoland. Michigan State has room for two of those three, it's my understanding. Technically, they don't have that room right now, but that's their approach. If they get Akins, that'd be great. Then they'd only have room for Christie or Buffkin, two great players. What I don't know is if Buffkin wanted to commit, would they walk away from Christie? I don't know the answer to that. That's something they probably talk about all the time over at Breslin, what they would do, because they like Christie a lot. And if they get Christie, 6'5", virtuoso perimeter player, he would be the highest ranked perimeter recruit they've had since Shannon Brown in, 2003, 2002? So Christie's, there's a lot to like there. So Michigan had a virtual visit recently with Kobe Buffkin. He's always been fond of Michigan. Michigan was late to offer him a scholarship. Whether or not that hurts their chances, I don't know. Sometimes things like that can hurt. Not sure. But updates on the Akins recruitment, I think it's looking good. Would I call it a light yellow? Not yet. But 03, thanks, Chris. But looking good. Question number 9 from Sparta. Going through these a little quicker than usual, so maybe this won't be one of those 2-hour shows. Sparta is posting from a fly fishing flats boat in Boca Grande, Florida. All the while practicing social distancing from the mainland and waiting for a tarpon to roll. I'd take that. I'd do that. Tarpon instead of bonefish? Tarpon must have a 10 weight, right? That sounds good, man. Good for you. All right, he says, it seems like only a short time ago that Jimmy Harbaugh was the recruiting darling of the football world. He was busy turning recruiting norms upside down by holding sleepovers, climbing trees, traveling to Italy, and lest we forget, initiating the concept of satellite camps. Check out the big brain on Sparta. See, that's what happens when you're down there fly fishing in Boca Grande. All of a sudden he thinks he's Ernest Buffett. Already says, due to the current pandemic, all of these activities have become obsolete. Talking about sleepovers, climbing trees, Italy, satellite camps. He says, presently, Coach Mel Tucker is making his impact on the world of football, recruiting via social media. Coach Tucker's relentless use of Instagram, Twitter, Zoom, and virtual visits and graphic designs seem to be influencing recruits. I would agree with that. He says, question, do you think FBS coaches will put an increasing emphasis on creative directors like Michigan State's Derek Markle, who's doing a great job? If so, where do you think the salaries of the top directors will be in 5 years? Are they the future of recruiting? Will there be bidding wars for the top talent? Wow. Big question from Sparta. It's a thinker. It's a futuristic forecast type of question. And it's with astute observations intertwined and some shots at Jim Harbaugh. Well written, even had proper punctuation on his post. So that's what happens when you get rest and go fishing, which I need to do. I haven't had rest in a while, but my vocation is my vacation. All right, so yeah, I think coaches are going to put an increasing emphasis on creative directors. Tucker came in and said that was going to be something he wanted to do, and I was the first one to tell you that here many weeks ago, soon after he was hired, that he wanted to do what Georgia did and then some, and you've seen the results. There was a graphic that Michigan State sent out today that was retweeted by a kicker from Oklahoma, and it was something along the lines of, build your brand at Michigan State or whatever. And a lot of times these recruits, they get their own little edit. Yeah, build your brand. They get their own. It's not like they send the same thing to every recruit. Each recruit gets their own thing. Who was the one that had like an old vinyl album coming out of an album sleeve? And the guy thought, whoever it was, the recruit thought it was great, and they're happy to retweet them with a comment on it. Makes them laugh, makes them feel good. Grigsby, thanks a lot. Yeah, it was Grigsby. And I'm looking to see what that edit was, but I don't know. But it made it look like he was this like the singer on the album or whatever. But Grigsby, he's one of those Louisiana guys, a safety. He got a kick out of that. The kicker from Oklahoma got a kick out of his. And the kicker from Oklahoma said, okay, Brantley was the one that had the Meet the Spartans play on images. I'm reading the post here. Anyway, the kicker from Oklahoma, which I thought was interesting, was he said, Michigan State always pumps out cool edits like this, or words to that effect. In other words, that's a kicker from Oklahoma who from Oklahoma identifies Michigan State as being a program that pumps out cool edits for players. So at some point, players are going to be wanting and waiting for Michigan State to do one for them. It's a great thing. It's a great campaign. And Michigan State's doing well with it. You know that. It's part of it. And the other part is the Zoom and the contacts they're having with the players. And it's working really well. With a 0-0 record and no face-to-face relationships. So you're asking, will more coaches put an emphasis on it? They're going to have to, because whatever somebody's doing, others are going to copy it, and pretty soon you don't want to be the only one not doing it. So yeah, they'll have to put more emphasis on it. So you're saying, the question is, are they the future of recruiting? I wouldn't go that far. I would say they're part of it, just like strength and conditioning coaches became part of it 25 years ago. Academic support became a part of it 20 years ago. Now the graphic part with social media and recruiting, yeah, it's a part of it. And Derek Markle's a good one. And how about Mel Tucker bringing him in? He's doing a good job. But when Tucker was hired, and we were all waiting impatiently for him to hire assistant coaches, he was doing that and trying to recruit and to hire assistant coaches. He was contacting them, interviewing some of them, waiting for them to get back to him as to whether they were coming on the staff. While he was doing that, he was also interviewing creative directors. Now, I'm guessing that when Mel Tucker set out to hire assistant coaches, he had a really good idea on who he was looking for and who were on his wish list, because he's seen them work, and coaches just know who they're going to go after. I doubt that he had a list of creative directors in mind. Like, oh yeah, there's that guy at LSU. There's a guy at Washington State. So the word goes out he's looking to hire one. So I assume resumes come in and portfolios. Then he looks at them. Then he's got to interview. So those interviews were going on while we're waiting to see who he's going to hire to be the linebackers coach. He's doing all that stuff. He's hiring those on-campus recruiting directors, 2 or 4 of them. And, the strength coach, all that. he was hiring a lot of people. And in a short amount of time, they have a roster of support staff. And they're all young and eager to make their mark. And he's on everybody in a positive way. I mean, he's worked for Nick Saban. He knows what it means to be on somebody. But I think it's service with a smile over there right now, not with a scowl. But they're serious. But like Mike Tressel said, was it Ron Burton, when we had a teleconference with those two guys 2 weeks ago? I think it was one of those two guys. One of those assistant coaches said, hey, Mel Tucker will keep you on your toes. I think it might have been Burton. He'll keep you on your toes, make sure you're recruiting hard and all those things. So I'm sure he's keeping those creative people on their toes too. And he's savvy enough with social media and engagement that he can tell them exactly what he wants, and he'll give them feedback on how they're doing. And I'm sure they come up with ideas of their own, and he can give them feedback on that. I think that his tastes are good, and he's uniquely qualified to be really good in that area, both in terms of direction and feedback and all that stuff. So he hired Marco. Marco's doing a good job. And your question is, are they the future of recruiting? And will there be bidding wars for the top talent in the future? Bidding wars. I don't know. I never would have thought there would be bidding wars for strength and conditioning coaches, but there have been. But as far as these people go, they're good. But I suspect there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be good, So I'm not sure bidding wars. I'm sure that there won't be a small pool of people capable of doing that job. I'm guessing. And those of you that do that job, don't take that as any disrespect. There's also a lot of people that can do my job. I'm not, not saying it's a bad thing. All right, let's see. Let's go back to the chat area. We're just over an hour in. I think we're on pace to finish this thing in 90 minutes. I'm not in a hurry to get out of here, but I only posted I've gone through, 9 questions already? I've got about 5 more. I'm speaking too soon. I'll turn around and I'll go off on a tangent here in a minute and use up all my time out. So I'm just going to shut up. I'll go to the next question here. It's from Brad from Austin, Texas. I think that's Brad Frashenko. Any updates from your sources regarding Emoni Bates? And that piggybacks off of a question earlier tonight. Emoni Bates, and I think I mentioned this last week, and that's what the earlier question was referring to. Going back 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, it looked clear that Michigan State was recruiting him as if he was and was going to be an available recruit. Had him on campus for Midnight Madness, for games. He was one of the last guys to leave the court on senior day against Ohio State, first week of March. Won the Big Ten Championship, raised the banner, and, DJ Stevens was out there talking with him. Emoni Bates was on the court a long time. Emoni's dad was out there a long time. They were enjoying themselves. They were in the locker room like a recruit. And everybody knows that if he were to reclassify by the old rules, everybody was anticipating, you guys know the story. Everybody was anticipating that the new NBA collective bargaining agreement would allow one and dones his year of high school, his last year of high school. So he would be in that first group to go one and done. And he'd be talented enough to go one and done. So the question was, would he reclassify, finish high school earlier, and then go 1 year of college? I think that was the plan, right? Then one and done doesn't happen, so the G League springs up with a different way that they're doing things, and now players are going straight to the G League for a developmental thing. Was it Jalen Smith, $500,000 a year to do that? So, I was told by a good source that the rules, and it doesn't quite add up to me, and I didn't get reclarification on it, but I was told from a good source that Michigan State was like, well, we're not getting Bates now. It's not going to happen. And I'm like, wait a minute. He could still reclassify and be 17 years old, not be old enough to go to the G League. And I'm not clear on all of those rules. And I can't. That's why it doesn't add up to me as to why it would no longer be Jalen Green. Sorry, it would no longer be, even a a possibility for Michigan State. It's a possibility, but not like a worthwhile possibility. Not even. I don't know. I didn't get an answer to the follow up to the scenario I just painted to you. So I'm hearing from good people that they think it's SOL, not going to happen. But I've not gotten an answer on that scenario. So I'm not going to come out and say on the message board it's not happening with Bates. Although that's what I've been told. I'm not going to say it because it just doesn't add up to me completely. And this time of year, it's I don't know. I'm still trying to get more information on that. That's what it is. Sorry to be a bearer of bad news on that, but it's not necessarily completely bad news because it's not a done deal that way. I mean, it's not like Emoni Bates himself is saying that. I'm just telling you that's the word on the street, but I don't have the entire word. So everybody wants to know that, and I respect your question. I wish I had more information. I'm not going to dodge the question, but that's what I've got. And if you're wondering what I would say if you and I were over at Crunchies having a beer or at the Harrison Roadhouse, sitting at the bar talking about this stuff, if you asked me then, that's what I would tell you. So you're here watching Spartan Mag Live. I owe it to you to tell you what I'd tell you if we were at a bar, drinking beer. That's what I got, but I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on that. But I was a little surprised to hear that because it didn't make sense to me. All right, Andy from Caledonia says, obviously because of who remains on staff for defense, the defensive coaches have good insight of who they have and what they need recruiting-wise. Who do you think is providing that input for offensive players? Well, you're right. They don't have any offensive players back. But with Ron Burton, defensive line coach, and Mike Tressel, the former defensive coordinator, they practice against the offense every week throughout the season. Ron Burton could give them ideas of what he thinks about the offensive lineman, I'm sure. And I would have to believe that Ron Burton has had some of those conversations with Chris Kapilovic, the offensive line coach. But Kapilovic knows what he likes and knows what he wants and how many scholarship slots they have for offensive linemen. So what they currently have wouldn't have a big impact, I don't think, because you recruit those guys out 4 or 5 years out anyway on the offensive line. He's going to look for an offensive tackle regardless of what they tell him about that. Quarterbacks wise, as Michigan State went out and recruited Hampton Fay, they wanted to get one quarterback in this class. The quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, they looked at film, they looked at practice film, they looked at Peyton Thorne. They feel like they've got some competitors there, but they were still going to go out and get one anyway. So I don't think it changes a whole lot what they have as far as recruiting currently. What it does have an impact on is what they're looking for in terms of putting a two deep together for when practice starts. So like the spring practice that never happened, at some point they put together a first string and a second string because you need a group of ones to begin your first practice. These are your starters. So they had 10 offensive linemen with starting experience. I'm sure they looked at some game tape. They might have asked Ron Burton a little bit, but within a practice or two, they would have gotten some answers on their own. So it wasn't that critical at that time. I'm sure they're curious. And I'm sure they've mapped it out a little bit, but I'm not sure it's critical right now recruiting-wise. Hayden V8 from Grand Rapids says, why, in your opinion, was Coach D'Antonio unable to get his foot in the door at Cleveland Glenville High School? It seems he tried multiple times but just could not pull it off. Anyway, great that Coach Tucker could open that door so early at Michigan State in his tenure. So Cleveland Glenville has been a power in the past. Michigan State went after some players, but when you stop and look at it, Glenville's not been as strong in recent years. They were really strong earlier in the 2000s. And Michigan State got in on some players going all the way back to Troy Smith when he's a quarterback at Glenville. Michigan State was the leader for Troy Smith when Bobby Williams was here. They were going to get Troy Smith, and Ohio State offered late because Ohio State kind of liked him as a DB, believe it or not. Ohio State offers him late. They get him. He wins a Heisman Trophy. Michigan State knocked on that door pretty loud. Michigan State had a shot at like Dante Whitner, but he was such a big timer. Ohio State was going to get him. But, Kyle Jefferson, wide receiver that went to Wisconsin. Felonious Frank Clark. Pierre Woods, who went to Michigan. But you're right, Detroit Spartan. Cleveland, Glenville, not quite what it used to be. Coach Ted Ginn has battled pancreatic cancer, I think, since 2012. He's doing well. You can Google it and look it up. Still coaching. Gotta love that guy, huh? Still doing his thing. In the meantime, Cleveland, Glenville has, they're not producing the players like they did. I think it was back in 2006, there were 7 players from Glenville on the Ohio State roster. Scholarship play. I think they were all scholarship players. So 2006, there were 7 players from Glenville. And I think almost all of them gave Michigan State a little bit of lip service. They would come to Michigan State's camp, but just couldn't get any of them. But if you look in recent years, I just went through some of the rankings for Glenville players. Michigan State, the reason we're talking about Glenville is because Gravely, the safety, is from Glenville, the first Glenville kid I can remember. So they got him. He's number 35 in Ohio. Solid prospect. But last year, there was only one player in the top 60, the Rivals.com top 60 in Ohio from Glenville, and that was William Anglin, and he was an athlete, and he signed with Colorado. So Mel Tucker got one player from Cleveland Glenville last year. Tucker has a good relationship with Ted Ginn. Am I saying Gill? Ginn, I mean. Ted Ginn. Ted Gill was the former defensive line coach at Michigan State. It's not the last time I'm going to make that mistake. So Tucker's had a good relationship with Ginn for a long time. And that enabled them to get Anglin, helps them get Gravely, but it's not that pool of talent it's been in the past. That was last year, 2019. The year before that, in 2018, there was not one player in the Ohio top 60 from Glenville. Rivals.com rankings I'm citing here now. In 2017, there was only one in the top 60, and that was a guy named Kobe Bryant, and he went to the University of Cincinnati. 2016, there were 0 players from Glenville in the Ohio top 70. Glenville became a power. They played for the state championship in 2009. They were the first Cleveland public school team to ever play for a state championship. They upset Massillon in the semifinals that year. They were a power. But like Detroit Spartans said, not quite the power that they used to be for various reasons. Still, there's some players here and there that come up through there, and Tucker's going to have his ear to the ground there. In the meantime, Cleveland Heights, Cleveland Benedictine, Cleveland St. Ignatius, they're still strong. I would assume Tucker's still going to have ties there in his former hometown. Starting to lose my voice a little bit. I've been on the phone too much the last 2 days. With some old friends, as a matter of fact. So, might have to pull the tarp out and call it early tonight. We'll have to wait and see. Question number 13. Jim, our recent Ohio commitment did not appear to have any other Big Ten offers. Talking about Gravely. That seems very unusual given how hard the state of Ohio is recruited by Big Ten teams. Most of our recruits have no or mostly lower rated offers from Big Ten teams. That would be true for some of the Michigan kids. I would appreciate your hearing thoughts on this. Is it a concern, or does the staff get a pass with their first year? Have we found a recruiting niche between the Power 5 and the MAC? No, I don't think that they're aiming for a niche between the Power 5 and the MAC. But when you talk about Big Ten offers, Wigginton, I could see why people wanted to wait with him. I think he needed to add more speed based on his junior film, but there's some workout video out on him now. It's not out in the public, but I think that might have had an impact on going ahead and offering him. Antoine Booth, I think that more film might have attracted more recruiting attention to him as well. Gravely looks pretty good to me. The safety, hard hitter, good form tackler. does not. What I liked about him is a lot of he does form tackling at full speed. He does not break down to make his tackles. And when I saw that, I thought of Mike Tressel, because that's something Mike Tressel likes. He teaches guys to tackle through the player. Don't break down, because then you break down, you're subject to getting hurt by change of direction from the ball carrier. This guy's got a knack, near leg tackling with a hawk roll, get you down on the fly. And he does the tackling is his tackling is uncommon. It's uncommonly good for a safety. He plays a little bit of corner, a little bit of slot corner. You know, the feet look pretty good, especially in the slot corner. Does he have that top gear speed you need to be a safety? I'd like to see him in camp to see where that is. And I would say the same thing about Darius Snow. So some of the things he does are good. The hitting, you can be a hard hitter and a good tackler, two different things. He does both well. Offers from Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Duke, I think, Colorado. No Big Ten offers. Surprises me a little bit. Not sure why, but I would have thought that he would have been worthy of Big Ten offers. I wouldn't say that to be concerned about him. He might not check all the boxes. Maybe he does run well. I've just not seen it. But I would say that's a miss a little bit more on behalf of the Indianas and the Purdue's, Minnesota. Why weren't they offering yet? Not sure. Seems like they could have. That's not a knock on Michigan State. Put him in the talent pool. Barnett and Tressel like him. Whatever. Tyson Watson, I think he's an interesting one at Warren. He didn't have a lot of offers. I think that's a miss on behalf of the Big Ten region that they didn't have him offered. Derek Harmon, the Detroit kid, a little more of a project, heavy guy with some good form and some good use of hands. Again, I think that he's worthy of Big Ten offers. So I don't think this is a case where they're going after, two-star dark horses just because some of these guys don't have Big Ten offers. Ethan Boyd, I think he was a dark horse. 6'7", 290, big legs, big thighs on that guy. Moves well. Davion Prim, the running back from Oak Park. There's a lot of good running backs out there. Looks pretty good. You know how I am, if you've been watching me for a long time, running back film, a lot of it looks good. Some running backs look great, but a lot of them look good. Like a ton of them look good. So I'm a little non-committal on some of that. But your question is, because there's not a lot of Big Ten offers with some of these Midwestern guys, does that mean Michigan State has found a niche there? No. Michigan State is going after guys that pass their eye test and checklist on film, and they like them, regardless of who else is offered. The fact that there were no other Big Ten schools in there, maybe that helped Michigan State get them to pull the trigger earlier. But I don't think they're settling. Brian from Flushing, Michigan says, what are your current thoughts on our chances of landing Michael Trigg, the tight end from Florida? You spoke about him last week on YouTube Live a little bit. Just wondering what your current take on him is and where Michigan State stands after an offer was extended. I talked about him last week because I talked to Herb Haygood a little bit, and Herb said, don't be surprised if Michigan State gets in on Michael Trigg, 4-star tight end from Seffner Christian Academy in Seffner, Florida. And 4-star kid, 6'4", 214 pounds, ranked the number 44 player in the state of Florida. Athletic kid, as you can imagine, would be an interesting one. Well, Haygood knows him, knows his coach. Brantley, Michigan State's new commitment from Venice, Florida, is good friends with him. So those were the ins. And that was communicated to Michigan State. Michigan State looked at the film, offered the scholarship. I think the chances are good to be in there. I'll listen to what Haygood said about it. So I think there's a chance there. Can they get him without a visit like some of the others? I don't know. And in the South, a lot of times they commit, and that's when the recruitment starts. And the other ones will come in, and it could be competitive after that. Could he make a commitment, hold his place, and continue his recruitment to be open? I suppose so. I would imagine it could go a little bit longer with him, and you get more toward the visit season. But yeah, I think Michigan State's going to have a good chance. Florida State's been perceived as the leader, but based on the vibe at Michigan State right now, I think State's going to. I'm not going to say they're the leader. I'm not picking Michigan State to get him, but Michigan State's going to be in it for that 4-star tight end out of Florida. All right, last one from the mailbag, then we'll get over to the chat area. This is from Michigan State Pat. He says, can you share any more insight into your conversation with Herb Haygood and recruiting in Florida? How does he feel the former players on the Gulf Coast can help increase the Florida pipeline? Also, I know you mentioned Mel Tucker has already had calls with former players. Is this becoming an expanded avenue for identifying prospects in Florida and other places? Seems like I have read more stories about prospects with MSU connections. You're exactly right. And Mel Tucker has reached out to former players. He's had at least one Zoom teleconference with them, and he told them, you former players are a resource. I value your opinion. You're always welcomed here. And if you know of players that are out there that you have a connection with or that you've seen, let us know. They want to be aware of everybody. They'll evaluate, and they'll go after some of those guys. You saw them offer, was it Ulish Booker's son after LSU had offered him? Michigan State had looked at him. He's a defensive lineman and didn't offer him in the winter. And then the new staff comes in. They look at him. They like him. They offer him. Now you've got Myron Bell's nephew, Herb Haygood's nephew, basically. So, yeah, that's a thing. And you're going to see more of that. And it makes sense because the bloodlines run good, run deep, run effectively, and it helps you get an in. As far as what Herb Haygood was saying about Michigan State, former Michigan State players down in Florida, specifically in the Gulf area, Sarasota, Tampa, yeah, they're down there. And I'd been hearing about that. Big Movie, Ron Armstrong told me a little bit about that. Haygood said the same thing, that a lot of those guys have been, I wrote that article a few days ago, that there were a lot of Michigan State players, former players, that weren't here during the heyday. They weren't here during the glory years. They might have been around in 99. That was a very good year. But they've watched Michigan State rocket up and have great seasons in 2013, 2011, 2010, 2009, 2014, 15, some very good years. And they've, that if you're a former player, that's going to make you feel good. You're jacked up about your program and you want to help. And then Michigan State didn't recruit a whole lot in Florida during those years for various reasons. So now they are recruiting well. And some of those guys now are in their 40s. They're involved more in, the youth leagues with coaching and other things. I mentioned Marcus Waters. Marcus Waters played for a short time at Michigan State. He's still a Spartan. He's proud of it. And he coaches at the middle school level down there. And, they don't have, it's my understanding, they don't have middle school football in his part of Florida. It's more of like the police athletic league type of league. And he coaches a team there, and he's a big deal. I've heard Broderick Nelson is an organizer of some sort. Of course, Cedric Irvin is an assistant coach at Gulliver. I've heard Robert Flagg is in. So, interesting. I don't know. I mean, those guys want to help. So when it comes to connecting dots, creating connections, finding out what needs to be done, I think that Michigan State's, that is a valuable resource, and it's going to pay some dividends, I think. So let's get back to the chat area. We'll wrap this thing up. Appreciate everybody that's chimed in so far, and appreciate those of you that are attending Spartan Mag Live. All right, the Untitled Beer Ranking Show says, late here, but what are y'all drinking? I got the Rocks New Tequila Terramana. Pretty smooth. Glad to hear that. And St. Augustine Bourbon with Deep End. Did I already read these parts? Spartans Forever says, anyone watch the 2011 Big Ten Championship game earlier tonight? Still brutal. So much talent. Have another drink. You'll get over it. But, man, that was tough, wasn't it? Coulda, shoulda won that one. Roughing the punter when they didn't even have a punt block on. Wisconsin was good. Michigan State was good, right? Michigan State was good in 2011. So, could have, should have went to the Rose Bowl in 13, or did go in 13, could have went in 11, would have gone in 15 if the rules had been such. I mean, like the old Rose Bowl. Of course, these days you'd rather go to the playoff, but history will show D'Antoni went to one Rose Bowl. But if some of the rules had been what they had been in previous decades, he would have had 4 Rose Bowls. He would have had those 3, plus I think there was one where he tied for the title in 09 or maybe 2010. You know, a long time ago, the tiebreaker was whichever school had not been to the Rose Bowl, who had waited the longest to get back to the Rose Bowl, they would get the Rose Bowl bid. There was a time when that was the tiebreaker. So there were times when they would have gotten that one too. Could have went to 4 Rose Bowls. Had good enough seasons to go to 4 Rose Bowls. Think about that. And earning it. I mean, in 2011, they lost to Wisconsin. Didn't go to the Rose Bowl. But that was another year that in previous years when there was no Big Ten championship game, Michigan State was the best team in the Big Ten. They were first place, had 1 loss, I think, and had the tiebreaker over Wisconsin, had beaten them earlier in the year. They would have went, unless they'd gone in 11, because they would have gone most recently, right? So you could probably mix and match that. But, if that 2011 championship game hadn't been played, they would have went. But if the 13 game hadn't been played, they wouldn't have gone. So I guess that works both ways. So you can twist that around to make that stat fit, or any way you want it. Just like any statistic, you can get statistics to say whatever you want. I heard Bill Miller say that once. Not the financial analyst, the football coach. All right. Doors fan says, I watched it, heartbreaking finish. Yeah, it was. And I feel for you guys, because that 2011 game, I watched it maybe about 3 weeks ago, just the 4th quarter. And by the way, Michigan State ran a fly sweep to the short side in that game for like a 10-yard gain. Of course, it was Keyshawn Martin. Anyway, Chris Trainum says, if that was a Wisconsin game, I can't watch it. I hear you on that one. You know, I was not in the locker room after that. I stayed for the coaches' post-game interviews. Paul Konadike went to the locker room, and it wasn't open very long. By the time I got there, it was closed. And he said players were crying. I think Trenton Robinson was. I think Kirk Cousins, if he wasn't crying, he was very close to it. Man, that would have been hard. I mean, it was the most devastated locker room Paul said he had ever seen. The most devastated locker rooms I've ever seen, when Michigan State lost to Purdue on the onside kick again in like 1998, Courtney Ledyard, big, strong, hulking linebacker, broke down in tears while I was interviewing him. After losing to Weber State in the 1995 NCAA tournament, Eric Snow, inconsolable, crying, his last college game. That one, there was a lot of shock, too. A lot of guys standing around kind of in shock. It was also Heathcote's last game. I remember talking to Izzo after the game, and all of a sudden Izzo was on the job, and he talked a little bit. But that one, there was shock, but also some devastation. But the Purdue game, it had just happened year after year. And at that point, you got the idea, is Nick Saban ever going to get over the top? And if they don't, and they're not going to a bowl game in 98, if they don't go to a bowl game in 99, will Nick Saban get fired? Seriously. That was being discussed. Not by important people much, but talk shows and so forth. All right. RT Music Now says, first time live viewer. Thank you, RT Music Now. Feel free to tell us what your music situation is. And I suspect you posted that an hour ago. Sorry it took me this long to get to it, but that's kind of the way I am. I'm not all that punctual, so. But I know most of my weaknesses, so hopefully that's a strength. I don't know all my weaknesses, though. There's a lot of them. Chris Trainum says, just like I'll never watch the Notre Dame Valenti Rant games. Yeah, that was a tough one. And that one doesn't get played very much because Notre Dame beat Michigan State, and Notre Dame doesn't really have a network. Although you could see the NBC Sports Channel replaying that one. But it wasn't a glory season for Notre Dame. Detroit Spartan says, And ADs want ticket sales. So if they had to delay in order to have fans, I think they'd strongly consider it. You're talking about delaying to the spring. It's a good point. If they go half and half season, because I can't remember who it was that brought that up first. Was it a Big Ten athletic director? I prefer that not to be the case, but I wouldn't hate it if you got 4 games in September to October 15th, shut it down, and then play games in the spring. I know some of you would hate it, but I'll take what I can get right now. But if you could wait that long, and if there's enough progress in various areas that you can have fans next spring, I don't know. Part of me would like to play in the spring just to see Miami come up here and play in March, with it being about 40 degrees or less. Wouldn't be all that fun to the fans. And, there's something about spring cold. Spring 39 degrees is colder than October 39 degrees, unless it's raining. But the fall, it's drier, I think. It's drier. And in the spring, it seems like the air is more wet. And 39 degrees seems cold in the spring to me. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So spring, you've gone to like the green-white game 2 years ago when it was cold. It wasn't that cold. It was like 42. But, man, it seemed real cold, didn't it? That's what I'm talking about. The idea of playing in the spring sounds good to a lot of the country maybe. But up in here, it'd be a challenge. But I still wouldn't hate it. Spartan MD, Brain, I don't know what that's all about. Spartan Forever, 90% we have football. That's my guess. Maybe no fans or fans spread out. So Spartans Forever is putting more chips in there. He's 90% confident that there'll be college football in the fall. Bjorn Charlie says football will happen. However, if someone tests positive, they will shut that entire league down. I would agree with that. And what are the chances that you can have a whole conference or a whole team go a month without someone testing positive after they start mixing with the general student body? Just doesn't seem likely. Chris Trainham says, I'm about the same comp, 15%. The South will push for games till they can't. You're right. And I was listening to Tim Stout's show this week, good radio show in Lansing, and he had Greg Ianni on, the former Michigan State Deputy Athletics Director. And they were talking about that. That was a day or two after, I think, the SEC commissioner or one of the SEC athletic directors was talking about, I think the SEC commissioner said, look, we don't need the entire country to be on board, kind of hinting that they can just play amongst themselves and be happy with it. Greg Ianni's comment was, does that surprise you at all? It's the SEC. It's a former administrator there. Different type of approaches. Big Ten is becoming a little bit more that way, but yeah, football, it just means more. In the SEC, it's a religion. I think it means a little too much. And I'm in the business that would love it if it meant everything to everybody. More subscribers would be good. We could cover more events and have more writers and things like that. But I don't know. I think I know crazy when I see it. Anyway, you're right. The SEC is going to push until they can't. Isn't it 12 commitments with the punter now, Chris Trainham? Maybe it is. I'm not very good at counting. You're probably right. Is it 12 now? I think you're right. Yeah, because it was 10 before Gravely. It's 12 now. Sorry about that. I'm going on kind of the metric system. Spartans Forever says, I think, hope, pray that we have better treatments by then. I agree with that. RT Music Now says, heard the quarterback from Alabama, Tagovailoa, is transferring. Any chance Michigan State goes for him? Crossed my mind. Now, is he a grad transfer or would he have to sit out? I read all the articles, thought about it. I saw the tweets and read an article or two, but didn't take time to look more closely at that. Tucker, I heard from a good source, was interested in that quarterback He'd be a redshirt freshman. Okay, so he's not a grad transfer. That's possible. I don't know. The who was the grad transfer? Was it USC's? Was he going to be grad transfer, the quarterback? I forgot his name already. But Michigan State was interested in him, but didn't really. Yeah, JT Daniels, thank you. But, Michigan State never got any stroke on that one. So they were interested in him. Would they be interested in this guy? I wouldn't doubt it, but I'm not sure Michigan State would have much stroke with him either. Eric M. from Roswell, Georgia says, "Hey, Comp, love the podcast and coverage of MSU sports. Thank you." Thank you, Eric M. We appreciate the positive feedback. Thank you. This thing just jumped on me. Hold on. Lost my place. Got a lot of questions here. More than I realized. So hopefully I get through them. I'll try to go a little faster. This thing really jumped on me. Lost my place here. Gosh, there's a lot of questions. Good. Thanks a lot, guys. I should have jumped to these earlier. Sometimes I'm a little bit oblivious. That's no shocker to anybody. Masanari Katsumi from Tokyo says, "Go green." Go green to you too, man. Be safe. "I always wondered how those public schools like Belleville continue to produce stud athletes year after year. Is it just a matter of good coaching or also of recruiting?" Recruiting to an extent. They've got, when you have good coaches a lot of times are magnets for players. And you're seeing that at West Bloomfield a little bit. Oak Park, Belleville. I had a post about that at on the Underground Bunker message board. Whether it's Crowell or some of the others, there've been other schools in the state of Michigan that get a good coach like that, like when Greg Carter, who is at Oak Park now, when he was at Inkster, he had players there. So it's, if you want to call that recruiting, that's part of it. School of choice is part of it. But guys have connections to players and they have connections to coaches in those youth leagues, in Detroit youth leagues. So that's part of it. So all of a sudden Belleville crops up as a power, but they've not been a power all that long for football. I mean, they've had good teams over the years. Who was the quarterback they had? Truitt. Remember, was his name Ralph Truitt? Came to Michigan State as a walk-on quarterback. He was from Belleville. But now, in recent years, Belleville has had more of those, like, Big Ten level recruits. So it's gone up a level. But Belleville's not been that great that long. But yeah, it's about the coach. That's why. And some good coaches, good connections. Jargon JJ says, "My guess is that Tua's brother goes to Miami, Florida, or Florida State." Yeah, there were a lot of indications there with some of the tweets that came out that a South Florida school would be the most likely destination. Bjorn Charlie says, "Have you heard anything about stadium and facility upgrades that this new staff would like to see happen?" No, I've not heard that. And Bjorn Charlie's posting from New Jersey. I've not heard anything. I'm sure they will get some feedback from them once they start to use the stadium more, but I've not heard anything yet. I'm not sure they've spent a lot of time on that yet. There's facility upgrades in the football building, talking about extending the weight room and other things. So that stuff first things first over there. But right now there's kind of a chill, not quite a freeze, but a chill on spending right now for obvious reasons. Drippy says, "I just drank 2 glasses of water. Congratulations to you. Maybe that's why they call you Drippy. And he had some chicken. All right. Hopefully it was grilled, keeping the calories down and the fat down." Sola Beer Guy says, "Which wide receiver recruits are MSU targeting as top priorities right now?" Well, there's Andrell Anthony, of course, from East Lansing. He's a big time A+. Mel Tucker got in contact with him early on and said, "We're not letting you leave East Lansing." And Andrell Anthony listed his top 10 recently. Michigan State's in there. Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame. I think Purdue, Indiana. So that one's going to take a while. I think Michigan State was maybe slipping away with him a little bit. Tucker was hired. That created some interest. And Michigan State did well to get Andrel Anthony on campus for an unofficial visit and an opportunity for Andrel Anthony to meet Mel Tucker face-to-face before the shutdown. That helped, and it will continue to help. The other wide receiver that's interesting right now is that Keon Coleman from Louisiana, 6'4", 188. He has offers from Miami, Florida State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Penn State. I think Michigan State's going to get one or two from Louisiana. Might he be one of them? Stay tuned. Christopher Trainum says, happy wife, happy life. Got that right. This is when I got the sound thing straightened out. James DePore says, what changed for Buddin that everyone is changing their predictions? I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I just think Michigan State has been really effective with their messaging. And Michigan State, just the social media and the Zoom meetings, the virtual meetings. And in the meantime, I don't know it for a fact, but if Michigan State's gaining ground in that one and only frontier of current recruiting tactics, what does that say about other programs that they're chasing? Maybe they're a little bit less in this area, which wouldn't surprise me. You hear once in a while about virtual visits the Wolverines are having with recruits, and they're having them, and I'm sure they're going well, but I kind of have to believe that Jim Harbaugh is not really good sitting down, talking through a screen to someone. I'm sure he does it, but you've seen him. All right. Drippy says, yo, from Traverse City, Michigan. Untitled Beer Ranking Show said, Atkins rumblings that he pops sooner than later. What's the temperature on that comp? Not quite a light yellow. But it's close. But yeah, it's sounding good. And they've liked him for a long time. He's liked them for a long time. And I don't think he was necessarily planning on making a decision in May. But once that first domino fell with Pierre Brooks, what I posted at that time is that could create the dominoes to go. And that might be the next domino soon. Antoine Simmons is an NFL draftee, says JJ Jargon. I don't dispute that. And I hope you're right. Good kid. Detroit Spartan says it depends. Maybe A.J. Arcuri, maybe Antoine Simmons. Talking again about when the question came up earlier, as to whether next year will be the year that Michigan State's streak of consecutive years with NFL draft picks comes to an end. For those of you just tuning in, that's what we're talking about. That's what these posts pertain to. Henderson or Simmons get drafted. Chris Trainum says, talking about Xavier Henderson. Possibility. He's got to keep coming, keep going. Possibility. Good frame, good kid. Detroit Spartan says, so much depends on this year, correct? Naquan Jones could. Yes, he could, and I liked the way Naquan Jones had a couple of big moments in the bowl game. I thought for the most part Naquan Jones had a little bit of a sleepy season this past fall, but he turned it up in the bowl game. He's got ability. I'll be interested to see what Naquan Jones can do or will do when he becomes an everyday starter. Needs to light that wick a little bit more. Spartans Forever says Simmons is too small, I think. Possibly, but NFL, so much of it is, matchups and the speed game and the linebackers covering slot receivers. Untitled Beer Ranking Show says, and he can do that, he says, if the team has a good year, then someone gets drafted. I'm sure Mel campaigns for his players hard, which is sometimes the tipping point for teams taking a chance on you. Good point. Says Band says, too busy campaigning for mayor of Chicago. Taking a little swipe at Raekwon Williams there. Noah Conley says, Jim, how many do you think? It's okay. How many do you think the Spartans can win? I might be optimistic, but I think 8 to 10 is very in play this season. I think you are optimistic. 8 to 10, if they're 8 to 10, that would be magical. I doubt it. I mean, new coaches, new system. They didn't get spring practice. New quarterback. We have no idea what the quarterback's going to look like. Replacing a lot of guys on defense. Arguably the toughest schedule in the country. I think 6-6 would be acceptable. 7-5 would be an accomplishment. Could be wrong. Untitled Beer Ranking Show says Jones definitely could get drafted. I agree. James DePore says, will Mel have a recruit under 6 feet? Great question. Hadn't thought about that one. I can't think of any right now that are on the radar in that category. Drippy says, I heard Mark was a cop. Talking about the punter? Maybe so. I'm down to 10% left on my battery, so I got to go through this. We're still looking for information about that punter. We're still going into the follow-up. It's going to be interesting. Mr. Boneman says, Big Mel and his staff are on a nice roll. I would agree with that, and I'm surprised and impressed. Detroit Spartan says, if someone like Naylor had a monster year, maybe he gets drafted. A good point. Mr. Boneman says, U.S. schools don't work on punting. James DePore says, will Mel have... Oh, well, we've already went through that one. Reed could be a possibility. Reed. I need first names. Who the heck is Reed? I'm never good with first names. Oh, Jordan Reed? I kind of doubt it. Plus, you spelled Reed incorrectly, so that kind of threw me. I'm not criticizing. All right, Doors Fan 91 says, did one punter transfer to Nebraska? Yeah, that was Will Pristip. By a vowel, I like to call him, with his last name. Pristip, remember him? He was from Florida, came in as a preferred walk-on, had some talent, got a few punts in that year when Hartbarger was hurt, and then he was hurt, right? He was injured. So then Hartbarger got his year back. He entered the portal. Nebraska took him. If he were still around, he'd probably be punting first-string punter this year, I'm guessing. He punted for Nebraska this year. I think he was the first-string punter. Either that or he was the kickoff specialist, one or the other. He got on the field. James DePore, do you think Henry will stay in the draft? Still waiting to hear on that one. He shouldn't stay in the draft. The coaches were surprised he entered and they were kind of disappointed, trying to talk some logic to him. Not sure who he's going to be listening to, but it's probably going to be Gary Harris and Gary Harris's dad. I'm not sure what Gary Harris's dad is going to tell him. I've got some sources on that outside of the basketball office, and I got to believe he's coming back because that's what would make sense. But again, what's he coming back to? Does he come back? I mean, if he thinks he can play in the pros, and some of these guys, if they think that, it's like Cody White. You're not talking him out of it. And he's kind of in that category a little bit. So if he comes back, if he's deciding and he thinks he can play pro or get drafted, again, the idea of staying in college, you don't know what college is going to be. You don't know what the college experience is going to be like in terms of training, games, and those things. And if that fuzzes out a little bit, and it intensifies the chances of going pro if you're foolish enough to think you're going to get drafted high or at all. I hate to put it that way, but that's the way I read it. So do I think he's coming back? I don't know. I'm waiting. I'm awaiting a little more information that I think I was going to be able to get tonight. There's some conversations, though. And again, my sources are outside of the football on this one, are outside of the office. Conversations, which is not a great indication right now. I don't know. Doors Fan 91 says, Andrell Anthony is the recruit I feel gives Michigan State the momentum in-state, and other kids will take notice. Got to land the local kid. Good point. James DePore says, do you think Henry is testing the waters or going? I think I just answered that one. Maybe that was the one. Any rumblings on Lawyer? Spartans Forever says, seems like he loves Michigan State, and I hope he stays. I think you're right. He does love Michigan State. And that's one of the stories here. Michigan State, Izzo gives that tough love to players, and it becomes a hot button news item, but you don't see a lot of players looking to transfer from Michigan State. Lawyer, if Michigan State were to get Kareem Mane, then I think Lawyer would have to see the writing on the wall that his minutes would be not that great as a junior. Does he want to keep doing that? I don't know. But as of right now, I've not heard any rumblings. The word was a month ago that he was staying. He's part of the program, and they're happy to keep him. If they don't get Mane, they're happy to keep Lawyer as, even a backup point guard. They think that he can be a good 8-minute-a-game point guard. I talked about that last week, and he is. He'd be an experienced kid. He's got to work on his passing, though. I don't want to rip on the kid. He's getting enough abuse from people, but I would have expected him to be a better passer. He's not been a great passer. Spartans Forever says, I like seeing kids develop over 4 years. Great shooter. I think he can be a nice piece the next 2 years in a limited capacity. Talking about Lawyer. I'd like to see him pass the ball better, me personally. Tom Riggs, but you're right. I mean, he can make shots, right? And that's a plus. Defense becomes a question mark sometimes. Tom Riggs says, as someone who has lived in Arizona for decades, the MSU brand reputation is much better outside of Michigan. Lots of respect, familiarity. Mel Tucker's strategy to go broader may be a very wise one. Okay? James DePore says, do you think Henry will develop better under Izzo or in the NBA if he can get drafted? Under Izzo. For sure. I look at him as a sophomore. Look at Draymond Green as a sophomore. Look at Denzel Valentine as a sophomore. Morris Peterson as a sophomore. That type of thing. Charlie Bell as a sophomore. I think that Aaron Henry can make that type of progression. And if he leaves, Deontay Davis. Detroit Spartan says, if Mel can win 10 games, he'll have top 10, 15 type recruiting classes. No doubt in my mind. When he said he was going to be relentless in recruiting, he was not BSing. I agree with all of that. Jesse from Mount Pleasant. Jesse Adams, good to see you. Do you see Ricky White? Do you think he'll get playing time? Good chance. I mean, he had a great senior season for Marietta. Won the state championship. Excellent film. I could see him jumping ahead of Larice Nelson, C.J. Hayes, Javez Alexander, and being that fourth, fifth receiver. And then, sometimes guys get injured and stuff. I could see him getting on the field for at least a couple of games. More than 4 to burn the red shirt, have to wait and see. But yeah, I think he's going to compete for that. Carter 917 says, what are we hearing about Damon Payne? Nothing lately. Nothing more than what Corey Robinson talked about on the Recruiting Wrap podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I'd like to have another one this weekend. And his info was that Michigan State was getting a foot in the door, which was progress, because for a long time there was no heat between Michigan State and Payne, a terrific defensive tackle at Oak Park. Alabama's in there, LSU, Kentucky, and some others, Penn State maybe. Michigan State getting prim, getting in there with the Oak Park coaches. I'm not shocked that Payne is listening to Michigan State now. If they can get him to listen for longer and longer and longer, and if there's a season in the fall, and if Michigan State plays well, I think they have a shot. But yeah, I think Michigan State's has a dark horse chances with that one. Dark horse chance. They could tell him. They can really, you've got Naquan Jones, Slade, Hunt. They need defensive tackles. You could look him in the eye and say you're going to start next year. Very good chance you start as a freshman. I like his film that much. You're whistling to a great graveyard a little bit anytime you have freshmen starting, and you certainly don't want to guarantee anything, but more so than LSU or Alabama or some of these others, his path to the field, playing close to home, I think State's going to be in there. Detroit Spartan, please give Comp a thumbs up. Every click helps. That's the truth. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. Doors Fan 91 says, I remember 1 year Perla signed 2 punters in the same class. Was that the year with Mitch McKinney? Come on, George. All right. Rick Nash says, doing a great job grinding it out, Jim. Thanks. Spartans Forever. Jim, who is your Korean baseball squad? I'm going to get one. Are they playing, at like 6 in the morning? Is it tomorrow, or did they play today? Is that ESPN or the Major League Baseball Network? I'm not sure, but I'll be watching. And hopefully they get the ball and throw it, and they don't have a lot of I'll bet I'll like it because there's probably going to be more rallies, more hits to the gap, probably really good relays and plays at the bag. It's probably a really good brand of baseball. I'm looking forward to that. I hear that their bat flips are crazy. That'll be entertaining. I'm not a big bat flip guy, but it kind of looks kind of cool, doesn't it? But if you do a bat flip and then they throw the ball at your head next time you're up, can you complain? Drippy says, did you hear the rumor about the black Michigan State football uniform? I heard a little bit about it. Would not surprise me. Alaska Stoneworks Brett Dodgson says, Comp, great Friday night. Do you think we lose some running backs? Coming year seems crowded. Could happen. You could see some attrition at that position. Brandon Wright's got to get in there, get his shot. I don't think Connor Hayward's going to stay at that position. Anthony Williams, I liked what I saw out of him in the bowl game. You got Simmons coming in from Georgia. Yeah, it's crowded. It is crowded. I would not be shocked to see Connor Hayward get a look at linebacker. I've not heard that. Is he quick enough? I don't know. Would he get it done? Maybe it wouldn't work very well. I know people say H-back and tight end. Maybe H-back and tight end's probably more likely because Michigan State's thin there, but they're thin at linebacker too. Maybe Brandon Wright would be a linebacker type because he did that well in high school. Chris Tranum says, what's the player comp on Akins? Seems like he has a lot of Westbrook Morant in this game. Yeah, that's good. The player comparison he's talking about. Westbrook, Westbrook's fast. Akins is fast. J.J. Morant's so good, right? Was it De'Aaron Fox? No, not, there was a really good comparison that Rod and those guys were talking about on the Final Forum. Someone that played for Kentucky. There's someone better than that. I can't think of it right now. I'm failing. Anyway, I've got it. Yes, De'Aaron Fox. Thanks. Yeah, you go and look De'Aaron Fox video. That's the best. I don't want to say best case scenario because that sounds negative, but that's the slope of development. He's good though, man. Akins is a rare commodity. Detroit Spartan says would be very difficult to walk away from Christie. Great kid, and he can stroke it. You're right. Matt McLeod says, thanks, Comp. Listening from Chicago, having a couple beers and staying warm. Sounds good. Detroit Spartan says Jimmy Harbaugh is Mr. Personality. Gosh, there's a few of these. Have Saban assistants been successful in college? Mark D'Antonio was pretty good. Hayden Vischer says, Ghosty Boy, Kirby Smart, Dabo Sweeney seem to be doing pretty well. I'm not sure Dabo Sweeney was a Saban guy. He was an Alabama graduate. Detroit Spartan says we went from college kids doing the edits to full professional staff. Great point. Michigan State did have college kids doing the edits. Now they've got professionals, and it's looking good. Seth Foreman says just hoping our new Aussie punter doesn't have trouble with the snap. Funny guy. Ghosty Boy. Thank you, Hayden. Oh, because that was the thing. All right. Muschamp hasn't done that well. Kirby Smart doing well at Georgia. At Tennessee, Pruitt remains to be seen. McElwain did really well at Colorado State. Did well for a couple years at Florida. Then the wheels fell off. So, some of those guys have done okay. Good point, though. Good salaries for graphic designers, but not bidding wars. I agree with that. Spartan Vischer, Comp, have you ever considered revamping the Spartan Mag logo? Yeah, we've looked into that, and we have changed it a little bit. We've not run it out there yet, but we'll keep the thing on the front of the site the same. But we just needed it for shirts and stuff like that, and we've changed it a little bit. Not run it out there yet, but if you have any suggestions for me, send them to me. And thanks to a good friend of mine who helped me with that logo. You know who you are. Thank you on that one. Tom Kelly says, I'm a little behind in the video, but yes, there are bidding wars going on for graphics and video people. USC just hired LSU's top 2 video people. I did not know that. There you go. Thanks, Tom. How many more do we have? I'm going to have to turn this off because I'm about ready to lose the juice here. Let me just skim through here to see if there's anything I want to touch on. Looks like Salter's going to Tennessee. Interesting. He's got some ability. Athletic. Can really rip it. I don't like the fact that every time Salter threw the ball, it's a quarterback that Michigan State looked at and took Hampton Fay instead. If you look at all of Salter's film, you never see him drop back and go to a second read and throw it. It's one read and throw or one read and run. And he might run, scramble, and open something up and throw it, but you don't see him get in the pocket and move a safety and come back and do this. Maybe the coaches don't want him to. Maybe they coach him that way, but you would like to see on film that capability. How does this DB class rank thus far based on what you've seen on tape? I really like the Brantley kid. I really like Gabe Neely. For a guy that's 6'4", he moves uncommonly well, especially a junior, because he's a senior. A tall kid's just going to get quicker, I think. Hits hard, too, for a skinny, tall kid. The kid from Maryland is okay. Booth is okay. So now you've got Gravely. I talked about him earlier. The speed could be a question. So it looks good to compare it to past classes. Good. Right in there with some of those Harlan Barnett recruiting classes in the defensive backfield, I would say right now. D-Pen points out that Charles Rogers spent his latter years in Fort Myers. I've got to imagine Isaiah Lewis still has nightmares about the roughing the punter. Yeah, and so does D'Antonio, because they didn't have a pump block on. They were setting up for a return, I think. Definitely not going for a block, though. Jim McCarthy, talking about that Big Ten championship game. Anthony Rashad White. Mitch McKinney and Chris Solani in 1992, I think, were the 2 punters. Yeah. McKinney didn't last very long, and Solani did his best, but he was probably a better hockey player. That's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for chiming in. Thanks for your posts. And remember to give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe. Tell your friends about Spartan Mag Live. Tell your enemies as well. And we'll see you next week. Maybe we'll do it before Friday. Got some more plans in the hopper to do some other interesting, creative things. And we can't do it without you. You're always a part of it. If you're not a subscriber to SpartanMag.com, go over, check it out, become a subscriber, become a Magger. We'd love to see you over there. Hope everybody's doing well, doing safe, and having a good time. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for chiming in. See you next time, SpartanMag.com, Spartan Mag Live.